Good evening. Beautiful weather out there today. A little on the chilly side, but there's not 3 feet of snow out there, so I think that's pretty good February weather. Unless you're a snowplow truck driver looking for overtime. Fortunately, it's maple syruping weather, so if you're a snowplow truck driver that knows maple syrupers, you can get more truck driving time hauling sap. And then you get to clean trucks during the day. Over and over and over and over again. All right, let's start off tonight with a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful for your goodness to us. We're thankful for the beautiful weather we've had. Thankful for your provision in so many different ways, and even the provision of this break in the weather for transportation things and break in the heat and heating costs. I guess all wonderful aspects of something so simple as a break in the weather, and we're grateful for it. We are thankful that we can gather in your house tonight. Pray that as we do that, we would honor and glorify you, and we'll thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Yeah, because a break in weather means motorcycle weather. A little chilly, but motorcycle weather. And it is now just the evening service instead of the New Year's Eve service, so fixed it. Hymn number 563 to start off tonight, Count Your Blessings. If we were to count them, we'd find many, many. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly. You will, as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. When you look at others with their lands and gold, think that Christ hath promised you his wealth untold. Count your many blessings, money cannot buy your reward in heaven nor your home on high. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Okay, before the fourth verse, name a blessing. Who's got a blessing? Robert's like, oh no, got to switch the camera. You didn't have to, but Austin. Baby? Marriage. That's what we need. Baby. Mom's like, that's on the live stream.
Sunshine.
What? Sunshine. Oh yes, several days of it coming too. What's that, Joseph? Nature? Nice. That break in the cold. Motorcycle weather, right? Yeah. Abby? Bible to be able to study. Lots of good stuff in there. Seasons. Even if they get all monkeyed around sometimes, huh? This is winter, but it feels like spring. We might have cilantro that we could harvest by the end of this week with this good weather we're having. It's growing already. Any other blessings? All right. Oh, what's that? The hymns we sing. There's a lot of great truth that people have put down here. All right, on verse 4. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend. Help and comfort give you till your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. All right, back to hymn number 303, or 306, sorry. 306, Jesus Saves. Hymn number 306. We have heard the joyful call, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Spread the tidings all around, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Bear the news to every land, climb the steeps and cross the waves. Onward 'tis our Lord's command. Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Wafted on the rolling tide, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Tell to sinners far and wide, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Sing ye highlands of the sea, echo back ye ocean caves. Earth shall keep her jubilee. Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Sing above the battle strife, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. By his death and endless life, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Sing it softly through the gloom, when the heart for mercy craves. Sing in triumph o'er the tomb, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Give the winds a mighty voice, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Let the nations now rejoice, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. Shout salvation full and free, highest hills and deepest caves. This our song of victory, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. And number 522, we did get a blessing online. Someone was counting their blessings. Someone online counted the blessing that we have a camera and an internet connection and are streaming. Anyone guess who that is? We all know Mary appreciates that, so we're glad to be able to do it. Hymn number 522, He Lifted Me. In loving kindness Jesus came, my soul in mercy to reclaim, and from the depths of sin and shame, through grace he lifted me. From sinking sand he lifted me, with tender hand he lifted me from shades of night to plains of light. Oh, praise his name, he lifted me. He called me long before I heard, before my sinful heart was stirred. But when I took him at his word, forgiven he lifted me. From sinking sand he lifted me. With tender hand he lifted me. From shades of night to plains of light. Oh, praise his name, he lifted me. His brow was pierced with many a thorn. His hands by cruel nails were torn. When from my guilt and grief forlorn, in love he lifted me. From sinking sand he lifted me. With tender hand he lifted me. From shades of night to plains of light. Oh, praise his name, he lifted me. Now on a higher plane I dwell. With my soul I know 'tis well. Yet how or why I cannot tell. He should have lifted me. From sinking sand he lifted me. With tender hand he lifted me. From shades of night to plains of light. Oh, praise his name, he lifted me. All right, items tonight for prayer, praise, testimony, thanksgiving, memory verses. So we already gave blessings. Yeah, Austin. He cares about the big things. He cares about the little things. If it matters to us, it matters to him. I don't know how many times he has to prove that to us to get us to understand it, but we forget. Well, the praise I mentioned this morning, safety and travel. I only made a few wrong turns heading out to Indiana that extended my trip a little bit, but safety and travel. On the way back, I got to witness an accident. There was two vehicles ahead of me, all of a sudden just went sideways, pancaked the concrete barrier, lifted up in the air and everything, and I thought, I'm going to see a rollover. And it just went back on all four wheels. There was an opening off to the side that it just kind of pulled off on. I passed by and saw that the side curtain airbag had hit, which I guess if you're going to pancake a barrier, that's good. When I looked in my rearview mirror, the person was already out of the car and on their phone. I was like, okay, well, guess that's good, and no one else got caught up in it. So sometimes forget the safety we take for granted. Yeah, Abby. Romans 8:13. For those of you that didn't hear online, but I don't know it by memory, so I won't say it. But if we live after the flesh, we shall die. But if we through the Spirit mortify the deeds of the flesh, by the body, we shall live. It's close. They're all laughing at me, but it's close. It's harder when you're standing up here to even hear. It's like turning down the radio so you can see at night. You don't do that? Just wait. The day's coming. It's like, we got to remember in the car, like, whoa, quiet down. I've got to look for the road sign. What does that have to do with I don't know. But when there's no kids in the car, it's turned down the radio. I've got to see.
This morning at church, there was a kid sitting behind me, just singing the hymns with all his might, and it just made me smile and think about how happy God is to hear that kind of praise. So it was neat from the mouths of the children.
I could hear it during Sunday school when we got to the chorus of the Sunday school song we sang, and the kids started belting it out. My favorite one is Trust and Obey, because, even a 4-year-old will belt out, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus. And it does lift the spirit. All right, well, let's go to the Lord in a word of prayer. Father, we are thankful for your goodness, for your provision to meet our needs this week in so many different ways, whether it was through a bucket of primer on sale, safety on the road, the provision of gas in the car and money to buy the gas, provision of transportation in various ways, provision of the food on our table and all of the things that we ate, provision of health and strength, even among the physical complaints that we can have from time to time. Thankful for answers to prayer concerning my dad coming through surgery well and being able to come home. We pray for continued strength and healing for him day by day, and provision to meet their needs, as well as the needs of my brother and sister-in-law as they do the bulk of looking in and caring for the needs that are there. We just pray that you would strengthen them day by day and bless them as well. We're thankful for all of the blessings that we mentioned earlier. We're mentioning the beauty in nature and the wonders of the blessing of this warm spell that we've had in the middle of February, and the blessing of the changing of the seasons and the creation that you've placed us in, the blessings of salvation that we've sung about, the blessings of fellowship together, and even being able to share some of that blessing with the live stream that we're able to have. And Lord, it seems like that was a rarity even before COVID hit, but with COVID, we have the opportunity and the ability to be able to do that and to do that in a way that is a help to others, and we're grateful for that. We do pray for the continued physical needs of those around us and those in our church body with different needs. We pray for the financial needs day by day and week by week of each one in our body as well, and pray that you would help us to be an encouragement to others, whether physical needs, whether spiritual needs, whether financial needs, whatever the needs might be. We know we can find the answer in you, and we pray that we would be an encouragement to that. We do pray as we look into your word tonight that we would honor and glorify you and be lifted up by it, and we just thank and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Psalm 40. Almost picked up my hymn book to try to find Psalm 40. Actually, He Lifted Me was inspired by Psalm 40. It had Psalm 40 verse 2 as the verse underneath the title up there. And of course, we could go with anything that talked about being brought up from the miry clay, set upon a rock. There's lots of different songs that deal with that. there's a lot of Psalms even that deal with that. We have Psalm 40. We have, is it Psalm 110? Out of the depths have I cried, or is that Psalm 130? I think it's 130. I feel like now I need to look to be sure. You would think, being one of my, Psalm 130, I believe, being one of my favorites, I should know the number. Out of the depths, hymn number, or Psalm number 130. And this one is an extended version of that. Psalm 130, it's one of my favorites. I think it's one that I found in Bible college or in seminary to preach on, having just recently learned about the chiastic structure in Hebrew poetry. And the chiastic, the chi in Hebrew is X. And there's an X structure to it where it kind of goes down to a point and comes back, and the center is the most important thing, and everything else is just parentheses around the center. And we had just learned about that, and I'm studying Psalm 130 to do a homiletics class and preach on it, and I was like, oh, it's got that structure that we just learned about. And I was so excited that I got to preach on that and mention it to a bunch of other guys that had just heard the same thing in class. So loved that psalm and come back to it often. Psalm 40 is a longer version of that, but it's interesting as David talks about being taken out of the pit, that he talks about the same secret that got him out. In Psalm 130, David says he waits on the Lord, and he waits on the Lord more than the watchmen wait for morning. That just wonderful picture of those that are working overnight, waiting for daybreak and waiting for their reinforcements to come in, and the wait that they have for that. I suppose in today's parlance, we would probably say more than the 9-to-5er waits for 5 o'clock on Friday. You know, that person that works Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, more than they look forward to 5 o'clock on Friday. That's how much David was waiting on the Lord and looking forward to him. Now we have that same thing here in Psalm 40. Our title tonight, Getting Out of the Pit. So we're getting out of what pit? The great thing about the Psalms is you don't have to have the same struggle David did to have the same solution David did. Different struggles call for different solutions. My son texted me yesterday and says, "Hey Dad, what's it mean when the transmission blows up and it shifts and it still shifts and clunks?" Like, well, it means I didn't teach you enough about cars and the parts and what blowing up means. But aside from that, let's go with that. And later that precipitated a text from my younger brother asking, what do I need to look into? Well, you say, well, his solution is going to be a lot different than someone that calls to me and says, hey, I need to know how to make chocolate chip cookies. Because making chocolate chip cookies, the solution, is delicious, I can see that, is a lot different than how to figure out what's wrong with an engine or transmission that's clunking and causing problems. So how can the solution to everything be the same? Because David's solution here in Psalm chapter 40 is in verse 1. David says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. David finds that solution in a lot of different Psalms. And I'm glad to see that, because sometimes we forget as well what the solution is, and we need to find that solution over and over and over again. It's like that gallon of primer. Well, that's a silly thing to pray for, we might tell ourselves, and then we won't pray about it because, well, that's just a silly need, because what difference does it make? Why should I look to God for that? That has to do with what Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever store I'm going to, Walmart, whatever, and what they're pricing and what got marked down and what reasons it got marked down. What does that have to do with God? I had a teacher in 5th and 6th grade at a Christian school, and he was handing out report cards. Now, this teacher was well over 6 foot, probably not as well over 6 foot as you know, some of my boys, but when you're in it must have been in 7th grade, someone that's 6'2" seems really giant. He also had the shaved head thing going for the Mr. Clean look, and he was getting ready to pass out these report cards, and one of the students, I don't know if they were being serious or if they were mocking, was just like, "Oh, please, dear Lord, let my grades be good." And another student goes, "What good is that going to do now?" And the teacher, Mr. McPherson, held up those report cards in his hand in the manila envelopes that they were in and says, "Do you think God can't fix a grade on these report cards?" Well, we're all sitting there and we know the answer. The way he asked that, the answer must be that he can. But the teachers wrote down those numbers that are on those report cards. They've already submitted them to the principal. There's got to be copies of those numbers somewhere. They're in the teachers' books or on the teachers' computers. Computers weren't near as popular then as they are now, but those numbers have got to be a lot of different places. How could God fix that? Was what went through our middle school minds. But the teacher prompted us to know that, well, God can fix those things that are already written down, that are already finished. Now, how can God fix those things? Well, because he's God. David said, "I waited patiently for the Lord." Now, you say, was that student waiting patiently for the Lord? Well, whether through mockery or out of desperation, that student was seeking the Lord, and that's always a benefit. Verse 2 and 3, let's see the problem that David had, or the salvation that David experienced. David said, verse 2, "He brought me up also out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear, and shall trust in the Lord." A new song. He took me out of a pit. He took me out of fear and desperation and problems, miry clay, a pit, set me on a rock. He established my goings. He put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. He's completely reversed my situation. Salvation. A new song is a wonderful thing. In the tax office, I like to have music going in the background. My laptop I open up and find the family life streams, and I don't like all of their streams. And some of them can be distracting because of the words in there, or, So Peaceful Christmas is my tax season stream. And I got peaceful Christmas music. It's only about 1 out of every 20 songs have words to it, but it's peaceful words, so it's all good. And, Becky likes her stream too. And I don't know what she listens to, but it's not the same stream I listen to. But she has normally some type of worship music playing. We're all in the same area of the office. There's no offices. And at one point on Monday, I think it was, Fern turned and says, "I appreciate that both of you enjoy music, but I hear both of them." I'm right next to my computer. I didn't hear that Becky was playing music. She's right next to hers. Now, she walks around the office more, but she couldn't hear my music at her desk. And Fern, is closer to equidistance between. And she said, that new song that you two are playing, could you play the same thing, please? We got to, why do we play that? Why do we play music that's a new song? Well, it encourages us. We have a new song to sing. And some of those songs, as Al said, thankful for the hymns. Why? They remind us of that new song. So David is praising God for this salvation, and the key he talks about first. The key of getting out of the pit. Verse 1, "I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry." Anytime I think about waiting, I think about how much I don't like waiting. I don't think any of us really like waiting. If you throw a bag of microwave popcorn in, it takes too long. If you're waiting for your pan to heat up to fry some eggs, it takes too long. If you're waiting for the toast to get properly toasted, it takes too long. There's not much that we do that comes as quickly as we want it to, but there are things we can wait patiently for. You might stand in line somewhere as I did down in Erie at the smokehouse, because I heard that Federal Hill Meats had the best smoked meats in the area. And so I went and I stood in line, and I waited patiently. I wasn't in any particular hurry. My wife might have been in a little bit more of a hurry because she doesn't care for smoked meats like I do. But I could wait patiently because what I was waiting for was worth it. And sometimes that's what makes us impatient. Is it worth it? David said, I waited patiently for the Lord. So as I look at the psalm, I see what David does, and I think David is really explaining to us what it meant for him to wait patiently for the Lord. What goes into that to make it a patient wait? Often when the one grocery store that I figured out how to do this in is Aldi's. When the lines are long or when it's confusing, I will tell myself it's worth the wait because I'm saving money. It's worth the wait for whatever reason. We need to understand that it's worth the wait to wait on God. His time is not our time. His ways are not our ways, but it's worth the wait. So what does it mean to wait on the Lord? Verse 4, David said, Blessed is the man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Waiting on the Lord means making the Lord our trust. Now, to trust in the Lord doesn't mean that we give up on everything else that we do. It doesn't mean I sit back. When I talk about I trust the Lord to provide for my family's needs, it means some busy weeks sometimes. It means I work, I shop, we cook, and we do all of that so that we can eat. But we don't trust my work. We don't trust my shopping, although I prefer my shopping to having someone else pick out my groceries because produce is a very personal thing. Some of you understand that better than others, probably my children. Well, it is. The bananas have to be the right color. And the lettuce has to be the right color, green preferably, not brown. And when someone else picks your groceries, it's not the same thing. We cook. We don't say, well, Lord's provided the food. It'll just appear on the table. We're involved in the process, but we don't trust our work. We don't trust our cooking. We don't trust our buying of the groceries so that we can eat. We trust God. I trust God to provide, not me. Hey, you can do that in any area. Well, what do I do with this need over here? Well, we do what we can, but we don't trust what we can do. There's a difference. When we trust what we can do, we put all the weight on ourselves and we feel the pressure of it. Now, if we put our hands up and say, I trust God and I'm not going to do anything, are we really trusting God? It's like that guy that was stuck on his roof and prayed and said, God, please deliver me because the floodwaters are rising. And I prayed, God, deliver me. And first a boat comes by and the guy says, no thanks, I don't need a lift. I prayed. A bigger boat comes by. Do you need a lift? Nope, I prayed, God will deliver me. Finally, a helicopter comes by and the guy says, no, I don't need a ride. I prayed, God will deliver me. The floodwaters rose, he drowned. And when he stood before God, he said, God, I prayed for you to deliver me. Why didn't you? He said, I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. What more do you want? There's a point that we need to do what God has given us to do, but we don't trust in what we do. Blessed is the man that maketh the Lord his trust. Not sitting back, but trusting. But not trusting the things the world trusts. That respects not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. See, the world has different ways of doing things. They trust in lies, they trust in the proud, they trust in other things. We trust in the Lord, which means we can do what's right, even though it seems like it's not going to work out that way, because we're trusting God. So make the Lord your trust. Step 1 in getting out of the pit. Step 2, verse 5, David says, Many, O Lord, my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done. and thy thoughts, which are to usward, they cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. Step one, they're making God our trust. Step two, remember God's works. Because we're forgetful. We forget about the things that God has done. We forget about the broader things God has done. When David says, many, O Lord, my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, he's talking very generally. What wonderful works has God done? Well, he mentioned some of them tonight. Creation. The changing of the seasons is a work that God does. Well, no. That has to do with the Earth's axis being tilted at 23.5 degrees, and the fact that we revolve around the sun, and we're further away from the sun, and the sun's rays are at an angle. That makes the seasons. Well, no, God changes the seasons. He uses scientific principles to do that. But when we remember God's work, remember his universal works, those ones that everyone benefits from and everyone enjoys, the creation. Remember those familial works, how God has worked in your family, whether physical family, church family, work family, whatever the case might be. And remember God's works personally towards you. How many of those do we forget? I mean, if we don't make note of them, how many times have we prayed and got an answer within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, within 2 minutes, and we forgot about it? Just because, I prayed and I got the answer and ho-hum. Remember the works that God has done. Praising God for a discounted gallon of primer. All of a sudden it's been remembered more than one day later. That's a good thing. Talk about God's good works. You know, that helps us with patience. When we know who we're waiting for has done wonderful things, it's good to remember it. And I don't know, seen some wonderful things done already this year. God is really good, and he cares about those things that we pray about. Some people have a prayer journal where they write down the prayer, and then when the answer comes, they go back and they write in the answer. And I think such a thing would be wonderful to have, but I never have developed the discipline of doing that. David, as he remembers God's works, I don't know if he had a prayer journal, if he was better at remembering, or if he just worked at it from time to time. Because sometimes we just need to work at it from time to time, remembering God's works, because that helps with patience. We can wait for something that is worth it. Verse 6, David says, sacrifice and offering thou didst not desire. Mine ears hast thou opened. Burnt offerings and sin offerings hast thou not required. Then said I, lo, I come, in the volume of the book it is written of me, I delight to do thy will. O my God, yea, thy law is within my heart. Waiting on God, David says, I'm going to dwell on what God desires. I'm going to dwell on what's important to God, because we think, well, sacrifice, offering, that's God wants something from me. Well, God is complete without us. He wants our heart. He wants our love. David says, I delight to do thy will. God's not interested in our sacrifices. God's not interested in our offerings. As we give ourselves to God, those things come. But the things that please God, to do his will, to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God. Dwell on what God desires. You know, when we're trusting ourselves, we say things like, well, I don't understand what happened. I did all of the things I was supposed to do, and where's God? I read my Bible every day. I put money in the offering plate. I prayed, where's God? Because we kind of in our mind get focused on those things we think God wants. And David says, I know it's not sacrifice and offering that you want. I delight to do your will. Focus on what God desires, and he wants our heart. He wants us to follow him. Dwelling on what God desires. Then David says in verse 9, I have preached righteousness in the great congregation. Lo, I have not refrained my lips, O Lord, thou knowest. I have not hid thy righteousness within my heart. I have declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. I have not concealed thy loving kindness and thy truth from the great congregation. Withhold not thou thy tender mercies from me, O Lord. Let thy loving kindness and thy truth continually preserve me. Oops, I went one verse too far. What did David do? He shared God's goodness. As he waited on God, this is an interesting thing. He's waiting for God. He says, I've talked about how good you are. He shared God's goodness. What good things of God did he share? His righteousness, his faithfulness, his salvation, his loving kindness, his truth. He shared what he was trusting in God for, even as he's waiting on God. Well, how can you be thankful for something that God hasn't provided yet? It's called faith. To share with others what God is going to do. Jeremiah sent me a text, I think it was yesterday. He said, Dad, I just wanted to let you know I'm praying for the church today. The next text. And I'm excited to see what God is going to do. Well, yeah. Well, what is that? That is sharing God's goodness, even waiting on that goodness to come. Now, we may be waiting on God's goodness, but that doesn't mean we're not experiencing God's goodness as well. Where David is, he looked and he said, I'm going to share what God has done for me, even as I'm waiting for God to deliver me in this situation. And then, after sharing God's goodness, he sought God for what he needed. Verse 11, withhold not thy tender mercies from me. Let thy loving kindness and thy truth continually preserve me. He just said he did not conceal God's loving kindness and his truth. And he says, Lord, let your loving kindness and truth preserve me. He's just sharing what God has done as he's asking God to continue to do that. Verse 12, for innumerable evils have compassed me about. Mine iniquities have taken a hold upon me, so that I am not able to look up. They are more than the hairs of mine head. Therefore my heart faileth me. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. He sought what he needed from God. Sometimes we seek what we need from other sources. Now, God provides through other sources sometimes. In fact, most times God provides from other sources. Financial needs do not often come in an envelope marked to you from God. They might have your boss's signature on it. They may have the government's stamp on it. They may have the Treasurer of the United States signature on it. Tax refund, you know. But it's God that's provided for the need. It may have a yellow markdown sticker on it. Or, if you're at Harbor Freight, an orange markdown sticker that was an extra 40% off last week. It might have those stickers on it, but it's from God. David sought what he needed from God, realizing God could provide through many different sources, but look at what he knew that he needed. He needed God's mercy. Well, that's hard to get from any other source than God. God's loving kindness, God's truth. Deliverance. Now, deliverance, God uses lots of different sources to deliver. If your car breaks down on the side of the road, and you pray and ask God to deliver you, and God sends a tow truck, or God sends someone to stop and see if you're okay and give you water and snacks or offer you to take you somewhere, God has provided deliverance through another source. Seeking what we need from God. Often we can get to seeking what we need everywhere else but from God because we think, well, what's God going to do about that? Well, God's not limited in what he can do about that. So we seek God to get us out of whatever pit we find ourselves in. And as we wait on the Lord, final thing I see that David does is he remembers how things end. He remembers the end of certain choices. And that helps us wait patiently for God, because if we know how the story ends, we can wait patiently. Verse 14, Let them be ashamed and confounded together that seek after my soul to destroy it. Let them be driven backward and put to shame that wish me evil. Let them be desolate for a reward of their shame that say unto me, Aha, aha. Remembering how things end. First thing David says is, Lord, let the enemies of your people fail. Now, as David asks that, he knows that's what the ultimate end is. We already dealt with that in Psalm 37. The wicked, they perish like the grass. They're not going to be around very long. Psalm chapter 1, therefore the wicked shall not stand in the judgment, or sinners in the congregation of the righteous, because the way of the wicked will perish. Remember how things end. The enemies of God's people will be destroyed. Now notice that doesn't say our enemies will be destroyed. Sometimes we can make enemies that aren't enemies because we're God's people. But the enemies of God's people will be destroyed. Remember that, because sometimes we're tempted to join the enemies of God's people because, well, they seem to be getting ahead. No, wait patiently on God. The enemies of God's people will be destroyed. In verse 16, let all those that seek thee rejoice and be glad in thee. Let such as love thy salvation say continually, the Lord be magnified. But I am poor and needy, yet the Lord thinketh upon me. Thou art my help and my deliverer. Make no tarrying, O my God. David reminds us that those who seek God will rejoice. That kind of helps us wait patiently for God, because that leads to rejoicing. When we see God's provision, when we do it God's way, when we find out his way, we don't try to short circuit it or go around it. David gives us his description of getting out of the pit. It all goes back to that in verse 1. I waited patiently for the Lord. Waiting for people is difficult at times and easy at other times. Being in the tax office, sometimes my calendar will say new client, and they've got an appointment, and they're not there at the hour prescribed. And it's like, okay, well, onward and forward with other work, write them off. Other times I might have a client that is normally very regular, is a good person, good people, enjoyable to talk to, and they're 5 minutes late for their appointment. And I'll think, no worries, they'll be here. Well, what makes the difference? It's the same person waiting, but it's who I'm waiting on makes the difference. It's easier to wait on someone that we trust. It's easier to wait on someone that has proved themselves. It's easier to wait on someone that we know is going to come through for us. And with God, we've got all of those things and more. And David says, I waited patiently for the Lord. I don't know what pits we may find ourselves in this week, what pits we may already be in, whether we know it or not, that we need to trust God to get out of and wait patiently for him. But we have that example of David. We need to make the Lord our trust. We need to remember his goodness. We need to declare his goodness as we wait patiently for him. Well, we are going to go to hymn number 425 as we get ready for our time around the Lord's table tonight. Hymn number 425, In the Garden. Why don't you stand with me as you find that, and we will sing together all three verses of hymn number 425. I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go through the voice of woe. His voice to me is calling, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever